All right. Well, welcome to our recorded broadcast, and this is the first in our series on media effectiveness. I'm Chris Williams with Arima Data, and we're interviewing today the founder of Arima Data, Winston Li. Winston, let's just jump right in. You're a PhD in stats. How did you get into advertising?
Well, it was a bit of a coincidence. When I was doing my PhD, one day I received a message from Matt Devlin, who was at the time building the marketing science team at PhD Media, and he reached out to me and asked if I'd like to help him with some consulting projects, and I said sure. I was always really interested in sort of academic industry collaborations, and I met up with him. We met in his office, and he told me he is looking for somebody to build this thing called a marketing mix model, which was the first time ever I've heard this term. So
Okay.
I joined him. We built MMMs for PhD media clients. And since then, we've kept in touch. And after I finished my PhD, he recruited me to join him. And so that's how I ended up in an ad agency.
Yeah. How many market mix models have you done over the years now?
Probably for 15 brands and maybe 50 models in total.
Yeah. Well, that's quite a lot more than most people have done. So, in your work with Matt, I mean, I understand you're also working with Rob Young.
Yep.
And so tell me, what was that like? I mean, he's a legend in the industry.
Yep, definitely. So one of the biggest things I've learned from Rob is some things that make statistical sense don't necessarily make immediate sense, and you as the modeler need to figure out what you would do to sort of balance the two. There could be, when I first started building MMMs, there are many cases where the results made perfect statistical sense, but Rob would look at it and say that doesn't happen in reality. And working with him for long enough, you would learn how to assess something, how to assess model results, not just based on what the software tells you or what the data tells you, but also how that integrates into the day-to-day planning and operating and the works of the agency, and how to assess something not just with a statistical eye, but also with the media mindset considered.
For sure. And so when you were thinking about evolving MMM into something and building out your own platform, sort of what was his take on that?
What was Rob's take on that?
Yeah, because I remember you were talking about
Yeah.
showing him some stuff on MMM.
Rob is always very, very supportive of this type of work. I mean, he's a very innovative guy, and he understands the industry, and when you understand the industry, that means you understand its problem as well. So there's definitely lots of problems in the media sort of measurement space, and there are lots of opportunities for new platforms, new techniques, and new companies to be built. So Rob is always very supportive of what we're working on here. He understands very well what we do, and he gives advice to us. And more importantly, he introduces people who he feels that we should connect, and including his son. So we do get a lot of value from working with him, from talking to him, and from just knowing him.
Yeah. And how do you see the MMM evolving? It's it's been around for a while. How is it changing?
I think MMMs needs to be more real time and more actionable. These are the two key pieces of evolvement that the MMM needs to make in order to be useful. On the actionability side, when we built MMMs in the past, we sort of built decks. I like to call them building decks, not models. You run these analyses, you then put them in a PowerPoint slide, and you share that with a client, or you share that with the planners, and they take that and they may do some things with it. Maybe they don't know what to do. Nobody knows what happens. So in order for MMMs to be useful, it needs to be integrated into planning. It needs to be integrated into media planning, but also business planning, so that the impact of the MMM can be directly translated into a downstream action that the planners, the non-statisticians can action upon. So I think that's point number one. Point number two is the real-time aspect of things. And it's in many ways even more important than the first one. When we built MMS in the past, they were always sort of consulting projects in the sense that you build this MMM, you invest a lot of money, you invest a lot of labor, you go get the right data, you build the model, and you rely on that model for the next year or next 2 year, however, depending on your budget cycle. And what people don't realize is models deteriorate. You build the model one time, it's good for a month, it's okay for the second month, third month onwards, it's not good anymore. Nobody could predict into the future that far. So having the ability to update these models very easily is very important to maintain model recency and model usefulness. And I sort of took this idea from quantitative finance. I've got lots of PhD friends that end up working in quantitative finance, where they also use models to optimize portfolio. My investment, I train a model, and the model tells me which assets do I sell, which assets do I buy, where do I invest more, where do I invest less, and these quantitative finance guys, they rebalance their portfolios on a daily basis, or sometimes even more often than that. Their models are so up to date, also because you have a lot more data in the finance space, but they update their models more frequently, and they actually act according to what these models are telling them. So I think we as marketers need to learn a little bit from what the other industries are doing and try to maximize the value, the best value out of the models that we built, rather than having it as sort of as in display, if you will.
Yeah, and clearly it would seem that the last 10, 15 years of media has been all about getting the data to work faster through APIs and sort of real-time reporting is what people have become used to through the interfaces from ad servers and all that stuff. It's the digital side seems to have been moving extremely fast in this area, and then you get into the multi-touch attribution and all of that sort of end of things. So it sounds like MMM is really sort of the evolution of that trend, but taking it to its widest perspective of incorporating all media and sort of all market factors.
That's right.
Have you been doing any of the modeling that over the last year or so that has brought in the market conditions around lockdowns and that kind of approach, that how that has affected marketers and also the audiences that they're targeting?
Absolutely. Historically, people used to call MMMs the media mix model. In other words, the focus is on media. You don't worry about all the other things. That's not really important. We just want to look at how media impacts sales, how we optimize media mix, and hence the media mix models. But slowly enough, people realized that's not enough, because media alone isn't media isn't the only thing that matters. In fact, of all these MMMs I've built in the past, media, the contribution to sales from media is probably only around 15% on average, I'd say. So if you only look at media, it's not doing the model enough. It's not giving the model enough credit, because you're only considering 15% of the entire story. And this is when we need to start to introduce other things into the play as well. And what we mean by other things include, promotions, incentives being offered, but also economic conditions, things like COVID lockdown, things like inflation, things like interest rate, things like GDP, seasonality, temperature. Depending on what category you're in, some or all of these factors will have a huge impact on your business, sometimes even more than media contribution. The other thing that people don't necessarily realize is that these factors influence one another. Like, for example, we spent a little bit of time working with a client in the lottery business, and one thing we learned there is jackpot size has a really, really big impact on media. if you spend the same amount of media dollars in a week where jackpot size is low, that doesn't drive much traffic. Whereas if you spend that same budget in a month, in a week where jackpot size is big, that will double, triple the effect that this media investment would bring you. Mm-hmm. So this is the evolution from a media mix model to a marketing mix model, where you're not only looking at the media factors, but you're looking at the business from a more holistic standpoint.
So a market mix model really then is much more of a tool for the marketer, for the advertiser, to be looking at everything that's that they potentially can crank the levers on, whether it's things like promotions, end dials, in addition to media and other couponing and direct mail.
And actually, I would add on to that the marketing mix model shouldn't be a tool that's only used by the marketing team. Obviously, the marketing team should be the primary user of the marketing mix model, but the marketing mix model has huge impacts in other parts of the business too. For example, in inventory planning, supply chain management, having the ability to know what sort of sales are we anticipating in the next week, in the next month, in the next quarter, could help them as well. I'm sure there are lots of other business units within the organization that could benefit from accurately knowing what sales looks like in the next periods, to help them plan better. Maybe HR, as an example. Then if you're from retail, or you're from sort of a business where your workers are highly seasonal, knowing the seasonal pattern could help you plan hiring better. And so all these are examples of how an MMM doesn't just help the media team, doesn't just help the marketing team, but could help the organization more broadly. And it is our job as the modelers to make that impact obvious in that organization, so people who wants to use the models will know how to use them and have access to them.
Yeah, and I guess, as you say, have access to them. If it's the marketing team that's developing and looking at this algorithm, it's creating those windows for the agency and for other parts of the external and internal stakeholders to also be able to see parts of the data that are going in and out of the system. It sounds like it's a pretty powerful and sort of comprehensive approach then.
That's correct. Yeah, and that's one of the things that we really focus on here at Arima is we don't want to make the MMM static. We don't just build a PowerPoint deck and send it off to the client and say, here you go, do whatever with it you want. That's not how our MMMs work. For us, MMM is an interactive, it's an ever-evolving piece of software that everyone in the business can log in, can access. Everybody sees the same views, so they don't have to circulate different versions of the deck. And everybody refers to the same standard song sheet, if you will, so that everyone is getting the same message across, and they can make their own interpretations for their own respective teams.
All right, well, that's cool. So just, quickly, I just wanted to ask for one last question.
Please.
One sort of final thought. Like, what is sort of like on your plate right now that you would say this is the next imminent development that you're going to be adding into this system? It is evolving.
That's right. I think there's a couple of things that we would like to start adding into our MMM platform. The first of which being data automation. So we've discussed this in the beginning, where in order to make the MMM useful, it needs to be more relevant. So in that sense, building more integrations with platforms like Google or Facebook, so that we can leverage their APIs, but also partnerships with companies who might have media spend data or impression data, so that they can be brought into the model easily as well. So that's definitely one area that we're looking at. But the other area as well is the ability to use the MMM in a more forward-looking way. So in other words, it's great that we can make accurate forecasts. How can we make that even more useful for the companies? Right? Does that mean making their day-to-day media planning easier? Does that mean giving them a more informative answer as to, For example, these are the media that you could try. Maybe these are things that you haven't thought about that you should be thinking about, or maybe even giving them more ideas around how to use media in a more geocentric way. So maybe these are the geographies that you should consider more investments in. Maybe opportunities for geo A/B tests. Maybe also even opening up stores in certain locations because media has really worked well in these spaces, and these are places where you can double down more to drive the best outcome for your business.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Obviously, we want to do more of these, and it'd be nice to sort of take a next step for the next round. We'll get into looking at some of these geographic A/B testing approaches and some of the details around how the models can do these predictive analysis, budget sizing, and all of that stuff. And we'll be chatting again soon for sure.
Definitely. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, cheers.
Okay, bye.